Hi, Louise, and welcome to the Feel Good Spine podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I am genuinely really excited and grateful that you are here. And I cannot wait to hear about your scoliosis journey. I'll let you say hi and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. So I'm Louise and I'm in England at the moment. I run the Life with Scoliosis blog and YouTube channel. So I have scoliosis myself. I also have a spinal fusion as well. So I've had my spinal fusion now for about 12 years, and I set up my blog initially as a kind of diary for myself when I was first going through the recovery from the spinal surgery. And then it just started to evolve into something that other people started to read and find interesting and helpful. So then I just kind of took that as like a platform to use to help others with scoliosis and provide my own advice after going through the surgery and try and support other people as well. And then I think it was last year or the year before, I set up a YouTube channel just to continue with that, really. And yeah, just mainly to help and inspire other people with scoliosis, and just to show that even though it can be difficult to live with, even after having the surgery, you can still do things, you can still live a relatively normal life, you can still achieve great things. And that's kind of like what I want to show, really, through my blog and my YouTube and my social media.
Yay, I love that. And I think I speak for the scoliosis world when we say thank you. Thank you for taking the time and effort to do this, because we need it. It's hard,
Yeah.
obviously. Yeah, it's hard having scoliosis, it's hard having a fusion, and we need people like you out here in the world telling us that it is okay and that we are going to get through it. So we really appreciate that. Did I see that you are running the marathon, or you're doing something like that?
Yeah, so I do also do quite a lot of fundraising stuff for scoliosis to try and, so I raise money for the UK scoliosis charity, which is the Scoliosis Association UK.
Definitely.
So in the past I've done things like, a few years ago I did a trek on the Great Wall of China
Oh,
to
wow.
raise money for the Scoliosis Association, and that was amazing, and I really enjoyed it. And that was through a company called Charity Challenge, and they've got loads of other amazing challenges as well. So I did that, and then I got the bug for it. And later this year, I'm going to be going to Machu Picchu to do. It's a similar challenge, like, but to raise money for the Scoliosis
Yes.
Association, but also to push myself as well, because I just want to kind of show that despite having scoliosis, you can still achieve great things, like the trek that I did on the Great Wall of China. And the marathon, I did Manchester Marathon last year,
Wow.
which was the first time I do run. I've been running now for about probably about 7 years or so. Um, and that was my first marathon, and I never thought I'd be able to do a marathon. That's one of those things that I wanted to do, again, to prove that I could do it, even despite the fact that I have scoliosis and I've had the surgery. And then this year I was going to do London Marathon, purely because I managed to get into the ballot, which is very difficult to do. But unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to run it because I've recently got injured. And that's not to do with my scoliosis. It's purely just because I did too much, too
Yeah.
much, and I knew that I thought that I would be able to do it. Because basically I was meant to be going to Machu Picchu in March, like now, basically. But
Yeah.
because they've got protests over there at the moment, that's now been moved. And because I got into the ballot, I thought, oh, maybe I've got time to train. But so I tried, and then I ended up injuring myself because I didn't really have enough time to train. I just wanted to try and do it. But yeah, I'm gonna hopefully do it next year.
Well, that's
give
awesome.
myself more time.
Yeah, and honestly, you do have to listen to your body. You can't, especially with a marathon, you can't push through that because you're just going to cause your body more harm than good. And even though the cause is obviously so amazing, but yeah, I think you've definitely made the right decision there, listening to your body.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about, because I do, obviously with having scoliosis, I know that you have to be more but I do a lot of strength training, so I do a lot of like similar exercises to that I see on your page, like glute exercises and things like that. I do pretty much every day
Yeah.
because I have to try and keep strong to complement the running, and I know that I need to do that.
Yeah.
But I think this time it was just a case of just ramping up the miles too quick, basically. So yeah, I can come back next year when I feel stronger.
Yeah. No, awesome. Yeah, perfect. And you'll absolutely kill it next year. I'm sure about that. And you get to go to Machu Picchu. So really you're getting the both of best worlds.
Yeah, so I just need to make sure that I recover now, get stronger, and hopefully, because I'll need to start training for that probably over the summer because the trek's in October.
Yeah.
Um, so I just want to make sure. That's another thing as well. I was worried that if I pushed on with the marathon, that I might do further damage, and then
Yeah.
that might jeopardize the Machu Picchu trek. So,
Yeah.
and that's been moved so many times now because of the pandemic first, and then because of these protests. So I didn't want to end up having to move it again because I'd injured my leg doing a marathon.
No, that's totally fair enough. Well, that's exciting for
Yeah,
you. And I can't wait to see how that all unfolds for you. We will all be supporting and rooting for you 100%.
thank
Um,
you.
you're welcome. So, coming on to my next question, I want you to tell us about your scoliosis and your fusion stories. So, going through your diagnosis, leading up to your surgery, how the surgery was, recovery, all that kind of stuff. Tell us about it.
Yeah, okay. It's a long story, but I'll try. Um, so I was diagnosed with scoliosis when I was 14.
Mm-hmm.
And up until that point, I had never heard of it. I didn't know what it was. And I didn't know I even had it. It was only spotted by chance because I think my dad noticed it when he was walking behind me one day. He noticed that my shoulders weren't even. So we went to the doctors, and then the doctor mentioned the word scoliosis. I still didn't know what it was at that point. Then I went to the hospital, had x-rays, and I'll never forget when I first saw that x-ray, I was just horrified because at the point when I was diagnosed, it was pretty bad. It was I think it was measured at over 70 degrees. I had well basically it was an S curve. So I
Mm.
had two curves, one thoracic, one lumbar, and they were both around 70-ish degrees.
Mm.
And I just couldn't believe that it had been like that for, well, probably since I'd started growing, and it just wasn't noticed. And
Yeah.
I think because it was an S curve, it kind of compensated, the curves kind of compensated each other. So it wasn't as noticeable than if I'd had one curve, maybe, or maybe I would have been leaning more to the side or something.
Mm.
Um, so it just wasn't noticed, and it was just a massive shock to me. So when I was 14, I was I was absolutely devastated. Obviously, up until that point, I'd been kind of had nothing else, no other health issues or anything like that. So it was a huge shock.
Mm.
Um, and I just remember like getting really upset and crying, thinking like my life was over, thinking that, because it was all so scary because I'd never heard of it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how serious it was. And I was told by the specialist that the only options I had, because it was so severe, I couldn't have a brace or anything like that because it had gone way past that point.
Yeah.
And the only option would be spinal fusion surgery, which terrified me. Like, there's no way I wanted that surgery at that point. So I basically, they said to me, you can either have the surgery, or because they could tell that I'd finished growing by the x-ray, they said they're fairly sure that I'd finished growing. So we can either do the surgery, or we can do like a watch and wait type thing. So then I had to go back. That's what I decided to do because I didn't want the surgery because I was scared of the surgery.
Yeah.
So basically for the next 10 years, I had yearly x-rays, and I'd go back to see a specialist, and just basically they just monitored it to see whether it was getting worse or not. And it tended to be very stable, because I had finished growing. So it was just more just to check, really. And yeah, during that time, I'd say I was kind of in denial that I had anything wrong with me. I kind of buried my head in the sand. I didn't really talk about it. I didn't tell anybody. Like, nobody knew I had it apart from my family, because I don't know if I was ashamed or I don't know what it was, but I just didn't want to accept it. So I just kind of covered myself up a lot, like wore baggy clothes, didn't tell anybody about it, kept it to myself, and then just carried on with my life, basically. Went to university, got a degree, did all of that stuff. And then it was when I was in my early 20s, I kind of started to get more pain. I really got really bad like muscle spasms in my back around where the lumbar curve was, and it was really, really bad. Like, I went to see loads of different specialists, like physios, osteopaths. I had acupuncture, did loads of different things, and nothing seemed to work, and it was just really, really painful. And I think by that point as well, it started to get me down a bit as well, because I was getting a bit older and I was doing more reading on it and like researching, and because I had it hanging over me thinking, oh, it's going to get worse as I get older, because it was already like 70 odd degrees. And when I looked at my like MRIs, I could see the curve like pushing on one of my lungs. Like, so one of my lungs had less space than the other.
Yeah.
And I was just really freaked out, thinking it's going to get worse as I get older. I'm already getting pain now, and I was like in my early 20s. So at that point, I went back to see a scoliosis specialist just to see what my options were. And it had got slightly worse. I think he said it was 80 something. I know there is a degree of depends on who's looking at the x-ray.
Yeah.
But yeah, when he said it was like 83 or something, I just started to panic, thinking, oh, it sounds really bad. So then I decided, well, it was a massive decision. It took me a long time to decide what to do. I spoke to loads of different people, got lots of opinions, but in the end, I decided to have the surgery. But it was mainly because of my mental health, because I was that stressed about it getting worse over the years, and like it just took over. It took over my life, and I just thought, I can't live like this. Plus, I was in a lot of pain as well. So yeah, I decided to have the surgery, and I was 24 when I had the surgery. And yeah, it was a really difficult time. Obviously, leading up to the surgery was tough, because you're kind of waiting for the date, and it kept getting moved a lot as well. And I think the wait was about a year at the time. I don't know what it is now, but that was then. So it was just like, you felt like your life was on hold, like just waiting for it. You couldn't really plan anything or do anything. And then, yeah, it was just a really tough thing to go through. And then having the surgery, after the surgery, I just remember being in a lot of pain, and it took a long time to recover. Like going back home and having to like, yeah, I wore a brace for about 3 months after as well. I had to have lots of physio, and yeah, I had to have about 6 months off work. I mean, it'd be different now because people are working from home, and I work from home. I work from home now, but back then, going into the office, I couldn't go into the office. I couldn't drive or anything like that for quite a while. So I was off for about 6 months from work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was huge.
Yeah.
And yeah, the effect on you, like psychologically as well, like going from, I don't know, like I thought that the surgery would fix all of my problems,
Yeah.
but in reality it didn't. Like, it obviously it took away the anxiety of it could get worse, because now it can't get worse, it's fused. But in my case, my scoliosis was, because it was so severe, because it was like 80 whatever degrees, and because it was quite stiff as well, because I'd had it because I was in my 20s at the time, and my spine was a lot stiffer than maybe people that have it done when they're a teenager. I don't know, but I was told that mine was quite a stiff curve. So the correction I got, if I'm being completely honest, I was a bit disappointed, like after the surgery, because I thought, oh, my spine's going to be straight afterwards and it's all going to be fine. But it wasn't. It was, I think now it's still around 40 something. So basically, they corrected it about half, 50%, which obviously it's better than it was. But I've still got all of the the symptoms that you get with scoliosis, but now I can't bend my back either. So I've got the sort of mobility, less flexibility, on top of the scoliosis. So I think I thought it was going to be a quick fix. It was going to solve everything, but it didn't really for me. But it did take away the anxiety that I had of it's going to get worse in the future, and it has made me feel more comfortable in the sense that it's not as severe as it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was just a roller coaster really of emotions, like after that surgery, because then I had to kind of come to terms with the fact that this is how my spine is always going to be. Whereas before I was thinking, oh, I'm going to be, because before the surgery you don't know how things are going to work out. I was thinking, oh, maybe my spine will be like straight at the end. But then you have to come to terms with the fact that actually this is how it's going to be now, and this is what I've got to work with, and it's just coming to terms with that and your new body and your new shape and everything. It is quite a lot, really.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you for sharing that. It's such a tough journey. One thing I do really appreciate about that story is that you waited and you made the decision in your 20s to get the fusion, which I think is really awesome and kind of rare at the moment.
Yeah.
From what my experience with these fusion stories is that people are getting fused at 12 years old and 13 years old. And even though, obviously when the curvature is at a very severe degree, that is obviously the best option. But I think what you did in allowing yourself to give yourself 10 years of time to make such a huge life decision, and then knowing that really was the best route for you, I think that is awesome, and that you gave yourself time to do that and really think about it. And it was, based off of a mental health thing as well, and that it really helped you to reduce that, and that's the scoliosis anxiety, as I like to call it, that it is going to progress and get worse. And I appreciate you being honest in the fact that it didn't completely fix your spine. So this is another thing, that I want to let people know, is that fusion doesn't 100% correct the curvature. Obviously it's going to make it so much better, and 50% better is amazing. But obviously it's not a 100% guaranteed straight spine.
Exactly. I think I was told it's quite dangerous to do that. Like they have to monitor the spinal cord while they're straightening the spine, and they can only take it so far. It depends on how flexible the spine is and things like that. But in my case, it wouldn't have been safe to straighten it any more than what they did, basically.
Wow. It's a crazy thing. But it's the results that you did get, sound awesome, and it really does sound like your curvature was very severe. 80 degrees, that is quite a curvature.
And I also had a lot of rotation as well, so like my ribs rotated round, and I had quite a big rib bulge, or what you'd call it, on your back. It was quite big, and that's something that I really did not like when I was a teenager. I think that was the worst part for me in terms of how that looked, because to me it was very noticeable. I know most people didn't notice it unless I pointed it out to them, but to me it was really, especially if I bent forward, or it was really bad. So the results of the surgery are now that I don't have that anymore. So that has changed my life in the sense that I've got a lot more confidence.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and also it's just more comfortable to kind of sit on. I mean, when I had that, it was very uncomfortable to sit on most chairs because it would just dig in. Whereas now I don't have that. So, but then it's not completely comfortable now because I do have screws like sticking out of my back a bit, and I can't sort of mold my back to the chair. I can't slouch.
Yeah.
So that can be uncomfortable in itself, but I've just kind of got used to that. And I always have a cushion behind me,
Yeah.
pretty much all the time to help with that.
Wow. Yeah, I'm the same. Like, obviously I don't have the fusion, and I do have the rib hump is really annoying. Even sitting back in the chair now, like I can feel it on one side just like poking into the chair, and it's not comfortable.
Yeah.
But nothing was
Yeah.
is, unfortunately. So it's just one of these things that we have to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, I still have like one shoulder blade that sticks out on one side,
Yeah.
because my spine's not straight, so it's always going to be uneven. But it's just that I can live with. It's just a lot. It's still a lot more comfortable than when I had like the whole rib cage sticking out on one side.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great that the surgery really helped to decrease the rotation, because I think
Yes.
that is aesthetically one of the worst things about scoliosis, is having that rib rotation. So it's
Mm,
really, I think that's really, really great that you got such a good result with that. Amazing.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so coming on to my next question, how would you say that your fusion and your scoliosis affects your life currently?
Um, I'd say that it does impact me every day, really. Because it's always there. Like I can always feel it. I feel most days it obviously because it's fused and I can't bend my back, so I have to adapt how I do things. So I can't just like bend down and pick something up. I have to kind of squat down, and even though that's better for your back anyway, but I suppose I've like adapted, but it affects me every day in lots of ways. Like just, from getting out of bed, I have to like sort of roll out. I can't just sit up properly.
Yeah.
Um, and just like getting changed, just literally like all the little things in your day that you don't think about. Like it does affect me, like putting shoes on and things like that. I can do it, but it's just a bit more awkward. So it affects me in that way. Um, and then kind of like I do get lower back pain as well.
Yeah.
I don't get, it's not severe, like it doesn't stop me from doing anything. And certain things do trigger it off. So usually it's things like that involve a lot of bending down. So if I'm cleaning up or packing to go on holiday or something like that, where I'm like bending down a lot and trying to pick things up, I get quite a lot of lower back pain then. And if I'm sat down for a long time or stood up for a long time, like in one position, I
Mm.
find it's better if I'm moving around, like walking around or something like that. Feels a lot better. So yeah, I do get back pain most days, um, but it's bearable, I guess. It's not like really severe that I can't do anything.
Yeah.
And some days are better than others. So some days it's I haven't got hardly any pain, and then other days it can be quite bad if I've done something to trigger it off, I suppose. So
Yeah.
it affects me in that way. Psychologically, it affects me less than it used to now, because I used to be thinking about it constantly, as in, it's going to get worse, or how I looked, in terms of what I wore, if other people were looking at me and other people were noticing it. But now, since I've had the surgery, I rarely think about how it looks, or I just don't even, rarely think about it unless I've got a bikini on or something, like if I'm at the beach or I'm wearing something that where my back is visible,
Yeah.
then I might get a bit self-conscious now still. Um, but it won't stop me from doing it. Like, whereas when I was younger, I just wouldn't, I hated it that much and it affected me that much that I wouldn't wear certain things, or I wouldn't walk past people like in a bikini, for example, because I didn't want people to look at my back.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm less affected by that, I'll just do it anyway. But I will still be like, oh, I wonder if they've noticed, sort of thing.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, it was funny being at that retreat in Mexico. I actually made a comment because usually when I'm walking around in a bikini, I am terrified that someone's going to see my scoliosis and make a comment. But then obviously being at a scoliosis retreat, it was like freeing
Yeah,
in a way to just be able to walk around and have your curves out and bend over and stuff, and no one's like staring at you or judging you or anything. Yeah, I don't know, I just thought of that because it was such a weird experience to not have that weird scoliosis
yeah,
anxiety that people are staring at you back, which no one is. That's the thing. I think it's
yeah,
all in our head. But yeah, I completely understand what you're talking about.
yeah. Because I think most people without scoliosis, they're not going to be thinking about like their back or other people's backs. I think it's
Exactly.
just, if you have scoliosis, it's kind of always in your mind. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So how would you say overall that your mental health has been affected by all of this?
I would say it's been affected massively. Like I feel like, especially when I was a teenager, um, I think it was just a big thing to go through, to go from having sort of no health issues, I suppose, to having that overnight and then being told that you need this surgery that's really scary and
Yeah.
serious, and can impact your life massively, life changing. So yeah, that, I think when I was a teenager, I think there were points where I was quite depressed because of the scoliosis. I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back now, I feel like I was suffering quite a lot. But I
Yeah.
think there was less awareness around, the mental health side of things than there is now.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I struggled a lot with just feeling isolated, feeling alone, and feeling like just lost really, like I didn't know what to do and I had no one to talk to about it.
Yeah.
And I just struggled quite a lot really. And then obviously you've got the body image side of things as well, so that's had a massive impact on me even now. Like I still have quite low confidence, and especially in how I look, and you know wearing certain things, like it still affects me now. And I think that's because when I was a teenager, it's a time where you are quite vulnerable really to that sort of thing, and it's bad enough when you don't have something like scoliosis. I think most teenagers feel self-conscious about how they look, so having scoliosis just makes it worse. um so yeah, it affected me a lot, and then there's the anxiety side of it. As I got older, that just got worse, because I was just constantly, literally there was points where it consumed my life. Like I was that paranoid that it was going to get worse. I would take pictures of my back like obsessively and just look at them and check different angles, check whether it had got worse.
Mm.
And it just took over my life to the point where I wasn't really focusing on anything else. It became unhealthy, really, like an unhealthy obsession, like worrying that things were going to get worse. And yeah, and then I think that anxiety is what triggered me to go and see a specialist and see what can be done about it. So yeah, I think the psychological aspect for me has been, I'd say, probably even worse than the actual physical condition itself in
Yeah.
some ways. uh so yeah, and now, and I never had any, so when I was diagnosed with scoliosis, there was never any mention of the impact on mental health or anything like that. When I went through the surgery, it almost felt like once you've had the operation, then you're seen as you're fixed, and then you're just kind of discharged and left to just get on with things. And there's a lot kind of that I feel that you need to kind of deal with after going through all of that. And I never did until fairly recently, when I started to talk to a therapist. Now, this was a couple of years ago, and I was going there for other things, but we did talk about scoliosis as well. And it's just made me realize that, you know, all of these years I was struggling quite a lot with anxiety and things, and I didn't realize a lot of it was a result of being diagnosed at that young age with scoliosis. So now I actually do have health anxiety, and I do take medication for it as well. And I feel like it is directly linked to the scoliosis.
Yeah.
Because I was so paranoid that now anything that I have wrong with me, I'm paranoid that it's the worst possible thing, because it's like the trauma of that, you know.
Yeah. No,
It definitely affects me.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting when you pointed out that when you have the fusion surgery, there's no aftercare really for mental health. And this is one thing I noticed at the retreat, because I was with a lot of girls that had been through fusion, and it's a very traumatic event to go through. And we'd have our little scoliosis powwows after our sessions, and it became very emotional because it's really the first time anyone's had a chance to talk about the mental health aspects of it. And I do think that this is something, whether you have fusion or just no fusion or just scoliosis, that the mental health, the medical world doesn't address the mental health impacts of it. I mean, the same thing happened for me. I've seen lots of doctors and physios and everything, and no one is, I mean, I've cried, and osteopaths, you know, talking to them about it, and no one has really offered me any kind of support or help, which, you know, I mean, what do they do, I guess? But it's nice. Like, this is why I find, you know, the work that you're doing and the work that I'm doing really, really helpful, because back when I was going through all this, you know, early 2000s, there was no one to talk to, and there was no one. Yeah, there was, you know, we didn't have social media. We didn't have anyone that could relate, and I couldn't talk to my mom or my friends. I didn't tell anyone about it. I used to just cry on my own. So it's such a scary thing to have to go through. So yeah, I just want anyone that's listening to this to understand that if you have scoliosis, or you have been through surgery and you've had a traumatic event, to please reach out or talk to one of us or talk to anyone else. Like, there's such a community now on social media with people that have scoliosis, and it is really, really important to be able to talk about it, because as you mentioned, it can really have serious effects on your mental health.
And I think that was a big thing for me, is that I didn't have anyone to talk to. And I thought that keeping things inside was the best way of dealing with it, but I think it just made it worse. And I feel like now, like you say, there's a lot of support on social media, and I think it's just amazing. And it's one of the reasons why I originally set up my Instagram and carried on with my blog after I recovered from the surgery, because I just wanted to help people, because I felt like I didn't have that when I was going through it, and I didn't want other people to feel alone, because it's the worst feeling ever. And I really wish that we did have social media. I go on TikTok now, and I see people doing TikToks about scoliosis and their recovery, and I just think, I wish that I had this. Because I just felt so alone. It's just only when I was in my 20s, when I was thinking about having the surgery, I started to reach out to people and talk to people, and I felt so much better. I started to, but that's because there was more then the internet, there was more like support groups and things then, and that was a forum that I used to go on. I know people don't use forums as much now, but it used to be a forum, and it was a scoliosis forum, and I met loads of people on there and talked to them and read loads of stories about other people that had had the surgery, and talked to people that had been through it. And I think that was one of the best things I did, because that made me feel less alone. And seeing other people's backs and x-rays, that was just amazing, because it was like the first time I'd ever really seen somebody else with scoliosis, and it just makes you feel quite emotional, because you feel like you're not alone. There's other people, and my back is actually normal when you look at somebody with scoliosis. So that's how I felt, and I was like, yes, I'm not alone.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally understand what you mean. It really is, having a scoliosis community, I find, is one of the best things, like, for all of us.
Definitely.
Yeah. I love that you went on forums as well. I feel like it's amazing how technology just changes very quickly, but I remember the
Yeah.
days of forums.
Honestly, I feel really old now, but yeah, it used to be forums, but now it's TikTok and
Yeah,
Facebook. But
yeah,
I just love seeing all the, people's videos and sort of diaries and vlogs of the surgery and that sort of thing and the
yeah,
recovery, because I think it's really important, because when you're facing something of that magnitude, it
yeah,
is really scary, and you do think, oh, is there life after it, sort of thing, like, will I be able to do stuff after it, and how will it be after it? And seeing people sharing their stories and, coming out the other side and being positive and happy and being
yeah,
able to do stuff, it is very encouraging, and it makes you feel a lot better when you're facing that sort of surgery.
yeah,
And that's what I wish I had. I suppose my equivalent of that was the forum, and I did read a lot of people's stories on there. But yeah, I think it just helps so much to
yeah.
see that.
Yeah, it does. Awesome. Okay, so coming on to my next question, could you tell us what you're currently doing to help yourself and to help your fusion, your scoliosis, both physically and mentally?
Um, I think physically, I like to try to stay as fit as I can. I feel like when I before I was diagnosed, well, before I started to get a lot of pain with my scoliosis, I never used to do any exercise. I didn't used to go to the gym. I didn't used to do anything. And then when I started to get more pain before I had my surgery, I thought I need to do something about this. I can't just leave it and let the pain get worse. So then I started doing more
Mm,
like low impact type exercises like swimming and things like that, and yoga and stuff. And that helped me a lot in terms of the pain, but also like with my mental health as well. Just staying active, I just find helps me a lot. And then since then, I've just really, I suppose, being fit and active is like a massive part of my life now. So I do run quite a lot, and I do a lot of strength training. So like usually um, strength exercises that complement running. So like glute exercises and core exercises, Pilates and yoga, and I've got a Peloton bike, so I do a lot of like spin type classes on there.
yeah,
So I just try, I think I deal with it by trying to keep as strong as I can and as fit as I can, really.
yeah,
Um, because I feel like that's something that I can control. I can't control the actual scoliosis, but I can try and keep as fit and healthy as I can to control that and help with the pain. And I know that I need to probably do more core exercises. I don't think I do enough of that. I know I need to do more in terms of protecting my lower back. I do worry about the impact of having my fusion and the discs at the bottom like potentially wearing out quicker, because my fusion is T3 to L3. So that's pretty much most of the spine. So I've got 3 discs, I think, left at the bottom. And obviously, I do running and stuff like that, a lot of high impact stuff. So I do worry about those discs, potentially wearing out a lot quicker. And I was told before my surgery that that was a risk of the surgery, that a lot of pressure gets put on those discs. Um, so that's something I do worry about, but I try to keep my back strong, really, and my glutes strong and the muscles that support that. I think I need to do more core exercises though. Um, so yeah, I suppose keeping physically active is the
yeah,
way that I deal with it. Yeah.
yeah. Obviously, I love that. I do support that a lot. I think when you said that you obviously can't control your fusion, you can't control your scoliosis, but you can control your fitness and your physical health. And I think that is a
Yeah.
really, really important message for everyone listening to this to take away, is control what you can control. And that is
Yeah.
our physical body, our physical fitness, also like what we're eating a healthy diet, not eating super inflammatory foods, getting lots of rest, 8 hours of sleep. All those things are really, really important. Would you say that keeping active and keeping physical also helps your mental health?
Yeah, definitely. Especially for me, it's one of the reasons why I like running so much. I feel like that is something that really helps my mental health because I can just switch off and I don't think about other things. Whereas a lot of, other activities, then I'm still worrying about other stuff or thinking about other stuff. But with running, I can just switch off. So I think running is probably the main physical activity that helps
Yeah.
with my mental health. But I also like hiking as well, and I feel like that helps as well because you're getting out into some really nice places with nice views and that sort of thing, and that I find that really relaxing as well. But yeah, just being outdoors really, and
Yeah.
just being active definitely helps.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point to make, is getting outside in nature, I think, is one of the best things that we can do for our mental health.
Yeah,
And just,
definitely.
yeah, getting that walk, getting that hike, getting that fresh air, getting away from technology. Obviously, I love social media, I love technology, but there is nothing better than a nice walk outside on your own or with your friend or with your dog or whatever, and just taking some time for yourself and your thoughts, and letting your thoughts all process in your head, and learning how to deal with them in a sustainable and healthy way.
Yeah, because that's another thing I like to do because I work from home and I'm sitting down a lot. I do try to make sure that I get up and I move around and I try and go for a walk like at lunchtime or after work because I find that with my scoliosis I do get a lot of pain if I'm sat down in one position all day. So I try to keep moving around, so like break up the day with walks or that sort of thing. I've also got a stand-up desk as well. So I can sit down for a bit, stand up for a bit, and that helps a lot as well.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you. Okay, so this brings me on to my last question. I wanted to ask you if you have any tips for anyone who is listening, who is maybe just about to go through fusion surgery or has maybe just had it. What would your tips be for them?
Um, I would say to be kind to yourself. It's a massive surgery. It's a really long recovery, and I think I was quite shocked at how long it took me to recover. I mean, I had the surgery at 24, so I think the recovery might have been a bit longer for me than, say, if you have the surgery when you're a teenager. I know I see people that go back to school after like 6 weeks, but
Wow.
for me, it took me, I would say, about a year to fully recover. Um, and it can be really frustrating during that time. You think that you're not making progress. You think that you're never going to be able to do the things that you could do before, but you will be able to do them. It just takes time, and you just need to be patient with yourself and kind to yourself and just let your body recover. And that's what I used to get a lot of people asking me that question when I was blogging my recovery. Like, people were asking me, how long does it take? I'm really frustrated. I don't feel like it's getting any better. I'm in loads of pain, and it's just a huge thing for your body to go through, and it just takes so long to recover from. And I think, yeah, just don't get disheartened, and it will get better. It
Yeah.
just, yeah, give it time.
Yeah. Be patient. I like that. I like that a lot. Well, thank you very much. Where can my listeners find you if they want to reach out?
um yeah, so I'm on Instagram, and my Instagram is Life with Scoliosis Blog. I also have a blog which is lifewithscoliosis.com, and I've got a YouTube channel which is just called Life with Scoliosis. So
Yeah.
yeah, any of those.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, for anyone listening, please do reach out to Louise and ask her any questions that you have, especially fusion related or mental health related. You know, we are here for you, and we generally care, and we want you to feel supported. And you know, we're all in this together as scoliosis family. We are not alone.
Exactly.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming, Louise. I really, really appreciate you giving me your time, and I hope that my listeners have really, really valued having you here, because I really have. So thank you so much.
That's okay. Thanks for having me.